On the surface, beating Oblivion at level 1 should be easy, but I'm here to tell you that everything is not as it seems. You might think, oh, just don't hit anything, it's a pacifist run, but that's not the case. Due to the way the level up system works, I am able to perform any action. What I can't do is perform those actions too much. This includes, but is not limited to, swinging a weapon, firing off a spell, taking damage, blocking damage, breaking into places, trying to make friends, literally walking and jumping. So, is it impossible? Well, let's find out. Real fast before we start though, I am in a race with my good friend JK Leeds to 1 million subscribers, and he told me if he lost, and he would beat Dark Souls 3 Cinder's Fist of Gradia only while singing Nickelback songs. Normally character creation doesn't matter too much, but here it is the second most important decision of the run. There are only 4 classes that are at least somewhat viable for what I'm doing, and of those, one stands above the rest, Dark Elf. The other 3 classes are Khajiit, Imperial, and Wood Elf. I'll get into the why in just a moment, but for now I give him a haircut far better than my own and name him Level 1 Babu because I'm bad at names. At first, things appear to be normal. An old man in expensive clothes comes in and tells us we are his destiny and we have to enter a dark cramped hole with him. I simply make sure to stay out of everyone's way while the Blades handle the assassins, then pick their bodies clean of any potions that they have. As soon as the guards are gone though, everything changes. 2 rats burst from the wall, and normally you'd use spells or a sword or hell even your bare fist to pummel them, but I can't. But what I can do is call upon the ancient elders of my bloodline to decimate the life of Mickey Mouse over there. The Ancestor Guardian is the Dark Elf's racial ability, but the important thing is that it's classified as a greater power, meaning it can be used without fear of leveling up Conjuration, or any stat for that matter. The drawbacks are that it's honestly kinda weak, but also that greater powers can only be used once every in-game day, meaning anytime I cast it, I'll need to wait for 24 hours. Yeah, I was looking at this screen a lot in the early game. As for those other 3 classes, Khajiits have Eye of Fear, a strong demoralize ability which would be great if it was a one-on-one encounter, never mind the fact that I would need to disengage while it's active, but hey. Imperials get Voice of the Emperor, a powerful charm spell that I don't think would have had too many combat uses, but could get mileage when I needed to persuade people. Lastly is the Wood Elf's Beast Tongue ability, which would let me control creatures. That sounds great, make one rat kill all the other rats and become King Rat. What happens when the spell wears off? That's right, King Rat tries to move on to bigger game, i.e. me. So in the end, I decided that the Ancestor Guardian is the best ability. It just had to make sure to kill anything it was fighting, and then I would stand around awkwardly for an excessive amount of time. The nearby goblin corpse has the key to leave, allowing me to avoid unnecessary points in security, but also a couple of scrolls that might come in handy. The first real obstacle of the run was this zombie. I thought I would have my guardian fight it, then just wait, but he can two-shot the ghost, so I had no choice but to run. Well, run. Unfortunately, this particular section was much longer than I recalled, so it wasn't long before I was killed by 1,000 nibbles. I did actually notice that sometimes the rats would attack the zombie and not me. Which means if I am able to lead the not so grateful dead around until he's one-shot, or even better, banned from the happiest place on earth, then deal with the straggler, I could pull this off. It took a couple tries for it to fall into place, but eventually the Walking Dead becomes the Laying Down Dead. This victory was short-lived as Bethesda's truly spaghetti code reared its ugly head. See, next up were goblins, and I had figured if the ghost had trouble with the zombies, it would definitely have issues with the slightly faster attacking, more aggressive Green Dota 2 players. So the plan was to just face tank the goblins and let the ghost do the damage. Great plan. Until the ghost decided to just do fucking nothing. This wasn't a one-time event either. Several times in this run, the ghost just had a change of heart and decided to be a pacifist, and let me tell you, this was terrifying. My whole plan going in was more or less to just face tank everything and outlive the damage while the ghost was the sole DPS on the team. So seeing him not do the D part of DPS was concerning. I wasn't sure how to proceed, but I couldn't just let the run die out in the tutorial. I'm better than that. So after a reload, I was able to straight up just walk by the first goblin. Okay, well, one problem solved, I guess. But of course, immediately after is a second goblin that is facing the entrance and decided he wanted to use my face for batting practice. But then something occurred to me. Maybe, just maybe, I could use the power of jank too. Holy shit, that worked. So yeah, I guess the new plan is to simply lead everything back here and then throw a spiked log in its face. Cool, I can do that. I did use the other traps to my advantage, and for once I actually got to see the Caged Rat Rebellion, so that was nice. The final and most important enemy here is the Goblin Witch. As you can see, I wanted to deal with her quickly, so I summoned Casper, who is still on his pacifist journey to enlightenment. As Wonderful as that is, I needed this witch to be 6 feet under right now. A smart man doing this run would probably just take matters into his own hands, literally. The reason being is that by backing up and trying to lure her into the trap, she will occasionally use the goblin staff to try and smite me. This ultimately uses the charges on it before I'm able to acquire it. It won't do a lot of damage, in fact it's the weakest staff in the game, coming in at half the damage of a basic shock spell. If you want to see more about that, shameless plug of my own video. So why would I want such a terrible weapon? Well, it's simple. Because staves do not level any stat. In other words, if I can find a way to keep this staff charged, I can always have a source of damage. Scrolls also do not level anything, but those are a one-time use, so having this staff, despite it doing as much damage as one of those child shake hand buzzer toys, is the better option. I love this game. She also drops a single filled petty soul gem, which will be nice, but I'm going to need way more than one. At any rate, I press on and meet back up with Old Man McDice soon, and he asked me what star sign I was born under, the third most important decision. Now, going into this, I wasn't sure what to pick. Initially, I thought I would just take the warrior because of the increased endurance, therefore meaning extra health, but then I got to reading, and a lot of the star signs come with powerful extra effects, such as the shadow giving me invincibility for 60 seconds once a day. That'd probably be pretty useful. In the end though, it came down between the serpent, which would allow me to deal 60 points of poison damage, or the lover, which can paralyze for 10 seconds. The damage would be nice, I think, but ultimately I chose the lover as it could either reduce the enemy's numbers by 1 in a fight, or if it was already a 1v1, put me at a clear advantage. The rest of the tutorial plays out normally, though I did try to body block the assassin, which didn't do anything, and now I'm presented with the single most important choice, my class. Now, you would probably think that this is actually the least important thing, as if I can't level up anything, then none of my skills matter. But the way Oblivion handles levels is that if an action is classified as a skill, for example swinging a sword for blade or picking a lock for security, then you build up a small amount of experience and after enough, you level up the skill. What that means is that the higher the skill is at the beginning, the harder it will be to level up, or rather the more actions I can perform of that skill before it levels. This means I need to carefully think about what skills will be necessary in the run and select them as my major skills for the initial boost. In the end, I went with combat specialization for an even bigger boost to the relevant skills, luck and endurance for my favorite attributes, then blade, blunt, marksman, mercantile, mysticism, sneak, and speechcraft. The offensive ones probably make sense, but why on earth would I pick the others? Well, I had a plan, just keep with me, it'll make sense in a while. With that, I use the Lover's Gift to paralyze the goblins, which for some reason makes the ghost want to fight, and I mean, alright, whatever. Then I wave goodbye to the friendly sewer rat and am ready to take on my destiny. The first thing I did was head over to Waynon Priory and tell Joffrey that the Emperor is dead, all hope is lost, not really, I have a necklace. After that, I help myself to all the potions in his chest and make my way to the city of Kvatch, which is where Martin, the illegitimate son of the Emperor, was last seen. However, things did not go as planned, for you see, a portal to hell opened and demons spilled out. Property value in shambles, now's the time to buy. Savlian explains the whole situation, then sends me, a random passerby, into the maws of the demonic world with a mission to save Tamriel. I mean, technically I did ask to help, but I was thinking more like passing out water or passing out demons and me flyers or something, not dive headfirst into the gates of the underworld. On the inside, I meet Illind, who looks like he's just seen a ghost, but this is where I reveal the next trick up my sleeve for this run. Companions! I have become the NPC that players hate to follow, too fast to walk in, too slow to run. Anyway, now a lot of you probably saw this coming. There are a plethora of NPCs in this game that will follow you, some of them are essential, some not so, but as long as you take the encounter slowly and wait after each fight, you can pretty much keep them alive no matter what. But I didn't want to do that. Specifically, what I mean is I don't plan on getting an unkillable or excessive amount of followers to just take through the whole game with and protect me. Although that being said, I do have a plan with Martin and Joffrey, but aside from that, any quests that have a follower by default or an option to, like this one, is totally fine. Otherwise, I'm going it alone. Speaking of being alone, Illind eats it, but a quick time warp later, he's back. Together, we fight our way to the Sigil Tower thing, and he happily murders the guard while I loot the key. So Illind, any more secrets you want to tell me about? At the top, I place my hands all over this big ball, which causes a massive eruption, art mimicking life and all. A smart player might soft reset for a beneficial sigil stone. So anyway, Savlian and his men rush into the burnt city, ready to retake what's left, and me, well, I'll get there when I get there. After the demons are swept off the street, it's time to go tell Martin about his destiny. But before that, there's something I want to do. First, I head back to Wayne Priory and talk to Prior Maberel, who lends me his horse. Then, while waiting for it to be light outside the city gates, I was attacked by a conjurer. I alone couldn't handle him, so I drug him inside the tavern, where I loudly announced that he was a bubble-blowing baby and he was to be beaten senseless by every able-bodied patron in the bar. With that dealt with, I began making my way around Tamriel. This is in part because not every location the main quest sends you can be fast traveled to, so I wanted to pick up some nearby locations, but also because I needed some lockpicks and didn't take any from the starting goblins. I figured a couple of the bandits around would have them, and I was right. At this point, I headed to the Breville Mages Guild to speak with Kud-E about joining. I did this for several reasons, but the first is because once you join the guild, nearly everything is suddenly not marked as owned, meaning it's not thievery. And what do a bunch of mages happen to have? That's right, soul stones. But there is another reason. First though, I must complete her quest. Long story short, a man stole one of the mage's staffs and I need to get it back. I was given a scroll to help the thief fess up, and it does the trick. Vamori tells me that he just wanted her attention and like, brother, have you ever heard of flowers? You can literally walk outside the city gates and just pick some for free. Anyway, he tells me he sold it to someone in the Imperial City and I'm sent on my way to retrieve it. There are two major ways to get the staff back, either by buying it off of Saurus or by stealing it. In the case of the latter, I would need to pick at least one lock or pickpocket the key, but both actions would count towards a skill, so I would rather not. On the other hand, to buy it off him, I would need to raise his disposition above 70. Normally, that means doing the persuasion minigame, which increases speechcraft, or I can just throw money at him. This is why I took Mercantile, so I could sell some things in the event I needed a bit of gold. I guess I could have just gone out and raided some bandit camps, but this is faster. So I sell a bunch of potions, getting at least 225-ish gold, then return to Source and bribe him once, hit him with the old Doom Charm, and buy the staff off of him for 200 gold. Easy peasy. Kud-E is delighted I was able to return with the staff, and thus concludes the first Mages Guild quest. My next stop is Shadenhall. Falcar tells me about a ring another associate misplaced. And by misplaced, I mean threw down the well out back. My task is simple, retrieve the ring. I am told Deetsan has the key, and speaking with her when Falcar is not around, she expresses concern, thinking that he is trying to get me killed. That escalated very quickly. As it turns out, this is the same assignment he gave to the previous associate, but he turned up missing. Nevertheless, Deetsan gives me the key to the well. Inside, I find the horrific sight of a drowned Vidkin, and on his body is an incredibly heavy item, the aptly named Ring of Burden. Unfortunately, I too succumb to a watery grave, but my death happens on leaving the well, meaning the game auto-saved me, dying, putting me in an unending cycle of torment, one where I live momentarily, then die instantly, doomed to repeat such a fate for all eternity. So I load a slightly earlier save. Fun fact I did learn here, for swimming, the skill increase is apparently the longer you're in the water, or some kind of formula for distance over time, I'm not sure, but when I slow swam, my skill increase was higher than when I swam fast. So, in an attempt to keep it as low as possible, I just swam quickly. Upon returning to Deetsan though, she informed me that after I went out back, she had confronted Falcar. And once he learned she held me, he flew into a rage and stormed out, likely to have not written my recommendation letter. She asked me to check his room for it and anything else suspicious, and this is where I ran into a major problem. I forgot that this drawer is an easy lock. Thankfully, I had picked up lockpicks for something else, and as long as I was careful, I wouldn't break one, but the real issue is my security skill is only level 5, so the moment I complete this, it levels up. And to make it worse, my alteration skill was also only 5, so even if I could acquire one of the lockpicking spells, I wouldn't be able to cast it. It's funny, I did consider taking the Tower Star Sign as I had a sneaking suspicion I would need it, and it seems I was right. Either way, I was now at an impasse. Do I abandon my plan for the Mages Guild and just take on the main game, or do I cast the forbidden magic and turn back the sands of time? I opted for the latter, so back to the tutorial dungeon I go. This time I make sure to pick up some lockpicks off the goblins. To save you some time though, I'm only going to go over what was different between these playthroughs and then pick up where the last one left off. I still picked the Lover as my star sign, but this time I went with Alteration, Athletics, Blade, Blunt, Hand-to-Hand, Mercantile, and Security as my major skills. In hindsight, it occurred to me after I left the sewers again that you get that "are you sure this is what you want to be" prompt, and I totally could have been a Dark Elf for the Guardian Spirit in the tutorial then switched to one of the other classes, but oh well, Dark Elf for life. I then returned to Breville to start my mage journey, but in all honesty, it was only because I wanted the Beguile scrolls. After obtaining the 3 for persuading Saurus, I headed off to the Bruma Mages Guild instead. The task here is simple. A fellow associate, Jaskar, has gone missing and I am tasked to find him. Again, there are multiple ways to do this, but the game's suggested path is to speak with the other mages around and see if they know what's up. Volinaro is the specific mage we need to talk to, and surprised with the use of a Beguile scroll, he's friendly enough to tell us that he can help us find Jaskar. We just need to pull a little prank for him first. All we have to do is break into Janine's desk and steal her manual of spellcraft. You know, because petty theft is a good joke. Anyway, he teaches us the spell Minor Latchcrack, which is an open easy lock on target spell. You might see where I'm going with this, but hold on, the ride gets a little bit bumpy. You see, Jaskar isn't actually missing, he's just invisible. Well, 100% chameleon to be more specific. And this spell is cast on him every night by Volinaro. What's cool is that it's actually possible to stand between them and get hit by the spell yourself, granting a 24-hour in-game 100% chameleon spell, which is exactly as busted as it sounds. I don't plan to use this for combat encounters as that's a bit too cheesy for me, but I am going to use it for some less than legal means. First, I pick the lock on Janine's chest. Since it's a very easy lock, it does not raise my security level and I have secured the book. Before returning it though, I head over to Source's house and use my newfound stealth to pick the lock on his bedroom door, loot the key from his desk, pay him no mind as I casually walk into his basement, and unlock the hard drawer with the aforementioned key securing the stolen mage's staff. I turn it back into Kudi just so I no longer have stolen squared items on me, then over in Cheydinhal, I use Minor Latchcrack to open Falcar's drawers, letting me see how he's into edgy alternative magic. Lastly, I return to Volinaro with the book, which ultimately leads to his big reveal that Jaskar was never missing. Though I do want to point out, Janine is also in the room and they both loudly proclaim it being a prank, so good going guys, intelligence level to -6-7 or something. Anyway, that's all 3 non-combat Mage Guild initiation quests done, the rest will have to wait, I need to get back to saving the world. But let's speedrun through this as we've already seen it. So, Joffrey, Amulet.
By the 9.
Maberel, Horse. Hertel, Scared Little Baby. Savlian, how you doing? Illind, reluctantly helpful scared little baby. Big Red Ball, local doctor notified. Random encounter conjurer, never should have come here. Martin, fell for my scheme. Now deposit 10,000 septims and your rich uncle will give you 100 times that. Martin and I return to Wayne Priory, which is now under attack by the Mythic Dawn. Joffrey tells me that the Amulet of Kings has gone missing, but I say, hey man, it's all good. We have the bastard child of the Emperor on our side. We can still do this. And together we set off for Cloud Ruler Temple. Is how the story would normally go, except I, had some unfinished mage-related business to attend to, and Martin and Joffrey are going to be my, entourage. So like I said earlier, I didn't want to have a follower throughout the whole game. That seemed like it would just make it too easy. As such, I needed a way to defend myself for the quest where I am alone. I came up with what I believe to be a sort of middle ground solution. First though, I need to finish a few Mage Guild related things. So, together with my band of merry men, I speak to Tychius, who tells me about a mage in the city whom he does not like and wishes to know why she's here. Speaking with Arana, the mage in question, she's heard rumors of a fabled book nearby, The Fingers of the Mountain. She wants me to go get it, ultimately same with Tychius. So I began to scale the mountain outside the city, one step at a time. Unfortunately, my grand plan to have Martin and Joffrey protect me as I ran errands for the magical ministry fell apart as they, were nowhere to be found. Thankfully, the spirit of my ancestors are here to save the day. Lightly crispy remains for a delicious midnight snack. Anyway, I hand the book over to Tychius, completing another initiation quest. Up next is the Anvil one, which involves investigating the disappearance of some merchants near the Brina Cross Inn. To do this, I am to play the part of a traveling merchant and get attacked. Wait, I don't like this plan. Though this is the part of the run where the game started to fall apart at the seams in its own quirky way. I saw something off in the distance, unable to really make out what it was, then suddenly one of my hidden out of sight bodyguards ran up next to me. The courier was not interactable at all, probably because that distant lump was her horse. How she ended up so far away from it and why she won't talk to me is beyond me though. Anyway, I'm attacked by the murderer and Martin casts anti-gravity. Next up is best city in the game, Skingrad. The task here is to locate a missing mage by the name of Earthor. And after obtaining the information that he was last holed up in Bleak Flat's cave, I set off. Zombies are everywhere, but they are no match for the combined might of 2.1 warriors, and before long I run into Earthor, who magically knew all the zombies were dealt with, so now he's ready to return, concluding another quest. For the final initiation quest, I found myself in Leywin talking to the Gale, who has lost her Seer Stone and without it can't function as the chapter hall head. So it's on me to investigate what happened to it. I spoke with Calthar and he seemed rather pleased it's gone as he believes she's not fit to be in a position of authority and offhandedly mentions Degale's father. This was a mistake though, as it turns out Degale's father was never a topic of conversation when she and Agata spoke, meaning Calthar might know a little more than he lets on. Regardless, this ultimately leads me to Fort Blueblood in pursuit of Degale's father's Seer Stone. This place is packed with marauders and it makes me happy I brought my ragtag group with me. While I could see it being possible solo, it would just be annoying to wait 24 hours after every single encounter. At some point I picked up a soul trap scroll, so I tried to use it on the imps down here and get a free filled soul gem, but even after attempting it several times, I could not make it work. Sometimes I think the spell wore off before they died, but other times I felt like it just didn't go off. And this is weird because I know for a fact followers landing the killing blow can proc it, but whatever. Oh wow, Calthar was the bad guy. I'm so surprised. Here is your rock Degale, but paper beats rock, so please give me my recommendation, thank you. And at long last, I have access to the Arcane University. What mysteries await within? The first thing I must do is obtain my mage's staff. In order to do that, I simply need to go speak with the mages tending to my magical wood. Didn't know this was a party school, but okay. First things first, I actually have to get there, so I begin making the long trek around the world, taking in the absolutely breathtaking views of Cyrodiil. Seriously, this game is absolutely gorgeous, but I need to remember that this is a Bethesda game, so there are issues with what I just did. That's right, as simple as traveling the world has dire consequences. When I arrived at Wellspring Cave, I noticed Martin and Joffrey were no longer with me. This wasn't out of the ordinary as I rode by like 6 wolves and 7 highwaymen on the way here. However, upon entering, they didn't load in with me. I waited outside until it was dark, but nothing. At this point, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and figured I would take it on by myself. They were probably alright after all. This was a mistake. I forgot how frequently the necromancers like to run away like little bitches and just cast magic, specifically conjuration magic. I'm not able to run them down in this playthrough, and although I have a couple ranged options, they are limited and the necromancers are, well, technically also limited, but it just wasn't the play. I drugged the first one outside with me, hoping something would help like a nearby legionnaire, but to my surprise, Joffrey had re-entered the fray. I wasn't going to complain, late to the party is better than never arriving after all, but something still wasn't right. After a bit of waiting, Martin was here too, but I couldn't speak with him. A restart fixed that issue, and I went back inside the cave, but they didn't follow still. However, I figured if they were waiting outside the door, then all I had to do was survive long enough to pull the necromancers to the entrance. Martin? You gonna do something about that guy trying to murder you? For whatever reason, Martin just stood there and took it until he was about a quarter dead, and then he decided to murder the necromancer so hard the gods erased him from existence. So, Mehrunes Dagon wins? In a last-ditch effort, I fast-traveled away and back, and now the two seem to be following me properly, and even came into the cave with me. For anyone wondering, yes, every time I closed the game, I had that automatic bug report sender prompt show up, meaning something was borked. At any rate, I watch as my 2 stoic bodyguards clear out the remaining dark forces, then I take my hardwood out of this big chest. What, YouTube? I took the staff out of the container labeled chest. You can't be mad at me for saying it that way, it's just a factually correct statement. I know he isn't the Emperor yet, but it's funny to me that Martin can't come in here. Anyway, I talked to Delmar about reinvigorating my wood with all kinds of magic. Now, dear viewer, you might be thinking that I will go with one of the destruction staves to give myself more damage. That's not a bad idea. The Mage's Staff of Shock, for example, deals 20 damage on target, literally 4 times stronger than my current staff, but it still leaves me with the issue of keeping it charged. So, instead of doing that, I can ask Delmar to make me a mysticism staff, specifically, a soul trap one. Which means, as long as I can find loose soul gems laying around, I can keep my magical equipment charged. Not exactly an effective way of doing it, but it's better than nothing. Step 1 of my plan was complete. At this point, I could just take Martin and Co to Cloud Ruler Temple, but there was a tiny bit more I figured I could use them for. So I speak with Raminus about my next task, which is to retrieve a book from the Count of Skingrad. Getting an audience with the Count, however, is quite difficult, and Mercator informs me that the only time he could pencil me in was at 2 AM near the cursed mine outside of town. I mean, I've had sketchier business meetings, so that's fine. I don't know why, but the image of Mercator walking towards me while his ominous lackey cuts in front of him made me laugh, like they rehearsed it and his bro just messed it up. Though, this entire encounter was pretty funny. While Martin tries to murder Mercator, Joffrey just watches, Glarthier shows up to tell me he thinks people are watching him, and the Count runs off into the distance and away from his responsibilities. Eventually, things settle down, and I speak with Hassildor about the lack of book he's giving me, and the quest is completed. The final thing I'm bringing Martin along for is Vatican's Secret, though honestly, their presence isn't necessary, it just makes more sense to bring them with me before dropping them off at Cloud Ruler Temple. The idea of this quest is simple. Researchers at some alien ruins have hit a wall and are no longer able to progress. Wall being a very accurate term, as there is a giant pillar that reacts to magic, but they haven't been able to solve that puzzle. None of that matters to me, as I deliberately won't be solving it. All I wanted was the key to get in. Bethesda, in an attempt to keep players from stalling their quest progression if they didn't have the correct spells, put a bunch of scrolls into a nearby chest. Now, I had never actually looked through this list of scrolls and only ever took what I needed, so I was hoping there would be a lot of variety, but specifically a lot of offensive spells. There weren't. In fact, most of them weren't really useful at all, so all that work for nothing. Well, not nothing. I did get the Soul Trap staff out of it, I guess. Oh well, easy come, easy go. I finally take Martin to Cloud Ruler Temple, where he delivers the speech of all time. With the two safely up here in the mountains, it's time to get back to saving the world. First step, getting the amulet back. Joffrey tells me that Boris is working on learning about the assassins and that I should meet up with him. Before that though, I need to make sure I am properly armed, so I spend some time by the rivers hunting for mud crabs. I had to do this several times throughout the run. I know if I didn't explain how I got filled soul gems, you'd all ask. Now that I think about it, ask anyway. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. Boris is being targeted by an assassin, but together we take him down, and by together I mean him completely by himself. You got this, bro. I explain the situation to Boris, and he notes that there is a book on the body of the assassin and that it might be related. He says I should take it to Tarmina over at the Arcane University, and it just occurred to me, if the Mythic Dawn agent hadn't been carrying this single book, how different would the story have been? Would the hero of Kvatch actually heroed the world, or just not? But either way, you know Mehrunes Dagon is whipping that particular assassin extra hard. Anyway, Tarmina explains that there are 4 books that make up the set, but like any publishing company that wants to drive up the sales, the 3rd and 4th are exceedingly rare. She gives me the 2nd and tells me I should check out the 1st edition over in the Market District. I head on over and tell Phintius that I need to find the 3rd and 4th book. The cliffhanger at the end of the 2nd one is just too much. He says the 4th book is basically impossible to find, but he does have a copy of the 3rd. But it's not for sale, it's on special order for another person. There are several ways to get it. You could steal it from the chest, or even bribe it out of Phintius' hands, and of course the ever popular option, murder! But the easiest path, and the one that won't increase any skills, is to simply talk to Gwynnis after he's picked up the book and tell him that the Mythic Dawn are the one that murdered the Emperor. He then very quickly hands it over and explains how to get the final volume, which is to receive it directly from a member of the cult. Fortunately, he already had a meeting set up, and wouldn't you know it, he passed that information along to us as well. What a swell guy. I tell all of this to Boris, and together we set off for the sewers, because where else would you have a creepy meeting with someone from a cult? Although, in hindsight, this might explain why the Mythic Dawn knew about the secret passage out of the prison. Also, I'm sure at least one of you commented saying, "Nuh-uh, Doom, you absolutely have to deliver the final blow for Soul Trap to work." Here's me casting Soul Trap on a mudcrab, and Boris obliterating it from full health in one shot, so checkers, baby. Boris and I then agree that I should be the one to meet the sponsor, mostly because I have no idea how this will go down and I would rather fight one enemy instead of 2. Raven then begins his speech about how great the Mythic Dawn are and that I should, totally join up, and if I tell one of my friends and they each tell a friend, I get 10% of everything, and wait a minute, this is just a pyramid scheme. For once, I decided to fight myself to make sure I'm not swarmed if something bad happened to Boris, but to my amazement, the goblin staff quickly takes care of, unable to fight back Raven. It wasn't a lot of damage, but I was pleasantly surprised. You might even say I was shocked at that amount of damage. With all 4 books in my possession, I return to Tarmina, who explains that these kinds of cult books usually have some hidden message in them. She will attempt to decipher that message and to wait a day for her progress. Now, you could do that, but I have the power of meta-knowledge, and I just know where to go. Simply wait for midday to roll around in front of this tomb outside the palace, and the map to the hidden lair of the world's most dangerous cult appears. North of Shadenhall is Lake Eris Cavern, home to many a Mythic Dawn agent. Assaulting the base might not be the best course of action. Luckily, not all problems need to be solved with murder. See, it's completely possible to convince Harrow, the gatekeeper, that you're here to join the cult. All you have to do is hand over all your possessions to him, which is not a great idea for me, but let's go with it. He remarks that the glorious leader Mankar Cameron is actually here now, so I can be initiated by him personally. Or so I'm led to believe, but after Mankar gives his speech, he just pieces out to paradise and instead Ruma, his daughter, will lead the initiation. She explains that the pact with Dagon must be sealed with red drink. For those of you out there unfamiliar with YouTube's ad-friendly guidelines, that's a word for blood. In other words, I must slay the captive Argonian and offer his blood to Dagon. Well, that was easy. At this point, I have joined the cult, and what I thought would happen next is that all of the NPCs would leave me, the random new guy, alone with their holy book. But that didn't happen. All of the acolytes and Ruma even ended up leaving, but Harrow and a guard stayed in the room with me. Stealing the book immediately makes everything hostile, and as you can see, I'm kinda defenseless now, so it didn't go so well. So this time around, I chose violence. As long as I took things slow and made it one-on-ones, this shouldn't be a problem. Shit. I knew the Alkalites should leave, but I was worried about Ruma. I kinda assumed she would be more difficult to deal with just because that's how games work, and she has a bodyguard, but there was nothing I could do. To be honest though, I had always planned on going through this section with red drink on my hands, as Ruma has something I want and won't let it go unless she's, well, dead. Something funny did happen though. The Acolytes either came back or never fully left the room, but either way one of them aggroed on me, but didn't attack? Then all four of them took their places except one that appeared to be heading for the knife, and I thought they were going to just complete the ceremony, something I had never seen before, only for them to grab the knife and charge at me from across the room. Okay then. This was extra helpful as it taught me that I only needed 4 blasts to kill an Acolyte, but 3 is enough to make them fear death, no matter how much that they shout that they don't fear death. Very important, considering there is now 3 more things in the room I have to kill. Well, no time like the present. I did need to chug a couple of potions, but I was able to paralyze the guard, then surprisingly Ruma went down very quickly. I guess it's a weakness to magic. Or my charm. Anyway, the real prize here isn't the Mysterium Xarxes, it's Ruma's Lesser Staff of Weakness. Not only does this thing do double the damage of my Goblin Staff, but it's also a direct damage hell spell instead of an element. And it's an AoE, which I didn't even realize until I accidentally initiated myself into the Dark Brotherhood with Gelius. Oops. Regardless, the staff is amazing. I mean, look at how effortlessly it tears through all of the enemies, and it has way more charges than the Shaman Staff. Albeit it'll soak up more soul stones, but at least I don't have to menu as frequently. Either way, I return to Martin with the book, who is, surprised to see it. And he tells me I should speak with Joffrey about some spies in Bruma while he sees if there's anything useful in this video game equivalent of the Necronomicon. Stefan! Joffrey said I need to talk to you about some spies! Stefan! I know you can hear me! Is this about me eating your pudding in the break room? Come on, man, I said I was sorry, I bought you some more, what else do you want from me? Eventually, he told me that the spies were sighted at a nearby runestone at sunset. Luckily for me, they're both here this time, so I can take out 2 birds with 1 damage health ball. I then informed Captain Bird that one of his guards was a spy who had a soul eviction, and he says I can freely search their house for any clues. This of course leads me to the secret basement with the secret battle plans to destroy Bruma. I show those plans to Joffrey, and he says he'll put them on the fridge, and in the meantime I should talk to Martin as he's made progress. This leads me to the first of the 4 fetch quests, a Daedric artifact. Now, almost any Daedric artifact will do, and the game points you towards Azura's Star. Originally, I was going to do this even though you lose the artifact, and an unlimited soul gem would be pretty cool for this build, but there is one teeny tiny problem. You have to be level 2 to start the quest. In fact, level 2 is the absolute minimum requirement for multiple of the quests, so that's it then. Run's over, you can't beat Oblivion without leveling up. Unless we think a little outside of the box, that is. See, it's true that you need to be at least level 2 to start several of the quests, but what if there is a way to skip the initial condition and just kinda start halfway through, and then finish? Sound fishy? Well, it's not. If you head southwest of the Imperial City, you'll find the Shrine of Clavicus Vile. Ironically, this quest is tied for the highest starting level requirement at a whopping 20, which is a far cry away from 2, so what do? Well, first we need to talk with Maraska about dealing with Daedra Lords, which does technically start the quest, but it's just the "you need to make an offering," which we're going to ignore. Instead, we head to the nearby ruins of Vandasil. Inside is a particularly terrifying NPC, Umbra. Currently, she has nothing to say to us, but if provoked, she will dispatch us with ease. We need to kill this absolute juggernaut of a woman. I tried taking her on in a fair fight, but she has far more health than I anticipated, and the moment she gets up, I'm dead meat. But not all hope is lost. You know how I've been meticulously not wasting any bit of skill increase? This is one of 2 reasons why. If you sprint and jump across this gap, you can land on a broken pillar. From there, as long as you have a ranged attack and a lot of time, the fight is free. I took all of her armor, I swear, because I thought maybe I would get into a fight where I needed it, and for no other reason, but as you can see once we pick up the sword, the Clavicus Vile quest updates. Umbra is actually one of the few Daedric weapons that can't be turned into Martin for his quest, so you might be thinking what was the point of that? Well, it can't be turned into Martin, but it can be turned into Clavicus Vile for a different Daedric artifact, and you guessed it, that one can be used for the portal. So I trade my legendary sword for a mask that isn't even good enough to be sold at a party, then pass that off to Martin. He's pleased and tells me I should speak with Joffrey. I am informed that an Oblivion gate has opened outside of Bruma and that I must go help the city guard close it. As such, I meet up with Captain Bird, who gives a rousing speech to his men before we dive headfirst into the fiery inferno. To be honest, there isn't really anything to talk about here. Because there are 3 guards with me, one of which is unkillable currently, it was more or less the equivalent of a stroll in downtown Las Vegas, heat and half-naked entities included. As such, I just used the time to gather more souls for later. And after about 10 minutes, Bird and I have made it to the top of the spire. I use the stone because why not, and make the sandals of not cold, ironic because open-toed shoes provide very little in terms of insulation. With that, I return and learn that Martin has made some more progress. Now I need the blood of a divine, a task that wouldn't be as simple as the Daedric artifacts because the gods do not manifest themselves in this world. However, there is a solution. The blood of an old dude that claimed to ascend to godhood. Yeah, that'll probably work. Sancre Tor is my destination, and housed within is the armor of Tiber Septim. Hopefully no one has been through to clean it, as I need to scrape the blood off his chestplate for the ritual. Or for that matter, hopefully it's his blood. Could you imagine if it was the blood of like a scamp he fought, or better yet like bear meat from his last meal and the portal just supernovaed when Martin tries to open it? When I arrive, I'm being trailed by a bunch of ghosts and skeletons, but it's fine, my trusty steed will know what to do. The dungeon itself is a sprawling maze of cobwebs and cobblestone. Echoes of darkness past still ring through the halls as it's crawling with the undead. Fortunately, because I am level 1, it's not wraiths or liches, just the common ghosts, nothing I can't handle, even if there are a lot of them. My goal is to free the 4 blades from their undead torment. This is achieved rather easily as I can pretty much just burst them down before they get near me. Once that's done, the 4 spirits will assemble in the main hall and cast Barrier Remover, which allows me safe passage to grab the armor of Tiber Septim. To be honest, prior to going into the run, Sancre Tor was one of the parts of the game I was most concerned about. I thought I would be stuck with very limited supplies and relying on the Goblin Staff for it, and that would have sucked, but as things worked out, it was totally fine. No, my horse! How could this have happened? Returning to Martin, there is no intermittent quest this time. I am told I need to recover a rock. Not just any rock though, it's a special rock known as a Great Welkin Stone. They are very valuable alien relics, thought to have all been looted by treasure hunters, but it would seem one yet remains, hidden deep within the ruins of Miss Karkand, so my objective is clear, plunge the depths and recover the stone. I wasn't worried about the combat part of this dungeon crawl, my staff was an AoE, so even if there was a large number of enemies, more often than not I will be able to bunch them together for collateral damage. But I was running low on soulstones. It had been a while since my last crab hunting trip. Fortunately, there is a very easy to obtain Varla stone halfway through the ruins, which will recharge all of my magical equipment should I need it. The only remaining concern was the undead king that spawns when you pick up the stone. At first, I tried to close the distance, stupidly, and paralyze him, which did nothing but caused me to experience 27 gigawatts to the dick. Second try, I stayed much further back and just kept blasting him with my staff. Apparently, Spell Reflect works on staves, and I never knew that. In the end, it was very close as I took a lightning blast and survived on literally 1 HP, but it was all worth it, not only for the stone, but for the staff the king had. The Greater Staff of Sickness, 3 times the damage and a slightly bigger AoE for when I want to make sure things are extra dead. I would only plan to use this for the big bads, but from the moment I picked it up, I knew I was unstoppable. Making my way out of Miss Karkand wasn't too difficult. The remaining zombies like to huddle together, and although they took several blasts, I wasn't in any real danger unless I ran out of soulstones altogether. Fortunately, that did not happen, and I was able to escape with my life. My next order of business was to head to the Mystic Emporium in the Market District and buy up all the cheap soul gems I could find. Then of course it was time to hunt crabs, but they must have been out of season as I was struggling to find them. When my pockets felt full of the souls of every Kingler in Kanto, I returned to Martin, who had deciphered the final part of the ritual, another item for me to collect, but this one was the most dangerous of all. What he was looking for was a Great Sigil Stone, but those could only be obtained from Great Oblivion gates, such as the one that turned Kvatch into the world's worst smelling ashtray. In other words, we need to let the Mythic Dawn open the gate, then I'll have to enter and obtain the stone before Bruma is destroyed. Because I did not do allies for Bruma, this section is, in theory, a bit harder than it would be, as instead of a bunch of high-level guards, it's just the city militia. That being said, since the world is scaled to my level, the enemies that come out aren't particularly strong either. And after just a couple of minutes, the Great Gate opens, and it's time. So this quest is the one I was most worried about. Why? Because it has an actual time limit. And I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not very fast. This isn't a case of the tortoise and the hare, more like the tortoise and a nuclear bomb, and I don't like those odds. But again, as I mentioned in the Umbra fight, I have been very careful to not make any needless skill gains. Reason 1 was for this gap. I always jump over it. There's probably another way around, but this is what I do. But reason 2? Well, if there was ever a time to be urgent, it was now. So I ran. And I ran. And I ran some more. Until I made it to the top, where I proceeded to ignore all the enemies and grab the stone like the lives of everyone in Bruma depended on it, because they did. And my reward for finally putting the pedal to the metal was watching everyone try and murder Martin. But, like the true ruler of Cyrodiil, he soloed everyone, including Captain Bird, while Boris looked on, clapping at his leader's insatiable lust for blood. Have I mentioned I fucking love this game? I was honestly kind of amazed with how little my athletic skill increased from all that sprinting, but I'm glad I took it as a major skill. It might not have worked out well otherwise when combined with the swimming for the Mages Guild quest and the fact that anytime I would reload the game, it would forget that I was in walk-only mode and I usually didn't care about the half second of regular walking that I did. All those things combined, it probably would have resulted in a level had it been base 5 or 10. Anyway, one more trip to sell stuff to feed my crippling addiction to rocks, and I did accidentally level Mercantile, but a quick load fixes that right up. This time I just bought the pre-filled ones because I could not be bothered otherwise, and with that, I am as prepared as I can be. Martin, open the gate. Now, you might be thinking it's all downhill from here, right? Surely the Great Sizzlestone quest is harder than Paradise, and you're not totally wrong, but you're probably overlooking one very important detail. Allow me to explain. There is a lone guard standing in the way of getting into the Forbidden Grotto, Cathatut. He possesses an item required to get to Mankar Cameron, the Bands of the Chosen. You can either kill him or do a task for him to get it doesn't matter which. And maybe now you're saying, yeah, Doom, we all know this. Right, but do you remember that the Bands of the Chosen are a piece of equipable gear? Gear that is light armor. Ah, the gears are turning now, right? I am required to put this on, and if I get hit too many times, light armor will level up. So just don't get hit, I hear you say, and yes, that's what I thought too, but it doesn't take into account my favorite thing about this game, Bethesda jank. I'm not sure if any of this matters, but allow me to show you what happened. First, I easily killed one of the Ascended Immortals with my staff, nothing out of the ordinary there. Then, because I'm sometimes an asshole, I pushed one of the prisoners back into the lava. It's not my fault the game has been borked since launch and they never fixed the cages. But then suddenly there was fighting in the distance, and before long I realized I'm being attacked by the 3 Dremora guards. They're pretty tanky, so I had to bust out the big guns. But they did get a few hits off, and after all was said and done, my light armor skill was 3/4 full. Not enough to disqualify the run, but that was weird and almost ruined everything. Also, Eldamil was dead before I could even talk to him. At first I carried on like nothing had happened. I mean, Eldamil is immortal, right? He should have come back, but what if he didn't? What if I was trapped here forever now? I ended up loading a save, and to be honest, I wish I hadn't. I kind of wanted to see what would happen if I pressed on, because he's the only one that can remove the bands, but it is what it is. Hi, Eldamil. Good to see you not face down in a pool of your own red drink, but I'm sure before the night is over, I'll witness that again.
You should not keep my father waiting any longer. He expected you hours ago.
Well, it's not my fault athletics is a skill. I got here as fast as I could. Enough talk, Cameron. We fight! The risk I took was calculated, but boy am I bad at math. Second try, the paralysis goes through, and I just nuke Cameron's health like it's nothing. Then I, of course, loot his staff and the Amulet of Kings. Side note, I thought only the Emperor's bloodline could wear the amulet. I mean, if the player tries, it says it slips off or something, so how come Mankar could wear it? Oh, Martin, getting all dressed up for me? I'm flattered. Come on, let's get you to the Temple of the One so you can be everyone's hero. I don't know what happened while I was in that sigil gate, but I sure would like to know. Dagon isn't prepared to give up that easily, so of course just as Martin is being crowned Emperor, he attacks the city. Normally this part isn't an issue, and here it kinda was, kinda wasn't. The problem was I couldn't use my strong staff as it's an AoE. I was using Mankar's staff, which is like 7 points of shock on hit, barely stronger than my goblin staff, and I was relying entirely on just chugging potions and my companions to keep me alive. But even with all my prep, it was too late. Dagon had arrived, and now nothing could stop him. Or so it would seem, as Martin had one more crazy idea. So together we dip into the Temple of the One, I check my stats one final time to make sure nothing had leveled, and Martin turns into a fucking dragon and I have beaten Oblivion without leveling a single stat. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this week's video. This was a blast. I mean, I love playing Oblivion, honestly. But it was a lot of fun trying to figure out like the puzzle aspects of this, like, oh, how do I progress without being able to like fight reliably, you know? To be fair, like I mentioned, companions were on the table if I really wanted to just be like, yeah, I now have this invincible teammate that just can't ever die and murders everything for me. But that wasn't fun. It was A little bit fun trying to do like the mages guild stuff, and I thought about doing more things. I mean, nothing in particular, just more quests, right? But at some point, it kind of made its rounds. It was like, yeah, this is the build, right? Like, just walk everywhere and zap it with my stick. So I didn't really, at some point, I didn't feel the need to do that, but it was still a blast. I still had a lot of fun. Oh, and we have this week's Grand Champion, Wonderwoodsy. Congratulations.